There was one night I went to bed and I woke up the next day, he won 4.4 million. And I was just like, oh my God, I got to watch this. And frankly, I thought it was Shohei Ohtani. Let's be real. That being said, the money was coming from there, and he paid me 16.2 million. The very next week, he lost $114,000. So I hopped in a car and drove to Fresno. It's a 3-hour drive. And I know where you live. You have obviously a 15-year-old son. And it's up to you. I mean, you know where I live, so if you want to have a war, we'll have a war. When I called him out on the gun and the buckle, he grabbed it and pulled it out. And I just told you, if you're going to pull that out, you've got to be willing to use it. Counted all the money down. It was like $166,000. And they said, this is a felony. They put us in a van, take us down to a local Bahamas jail. I was flagged in the system as a legal bookmaker. You're under arrest. And my wife starts hyperventilating. I sit down and I pull a marker for $12,000 and I bet the hand. Of course, loser. 24,000, loser. 48,000, loser. I was very greedy. I was very happy with the amount of money that was coming in, and it was also feeding my addiction.
Do you have regrets sitting here with me today? You've probably seen his name in the headlines, Mathew Bowyer, the bookie tied to one of the biggest gambling scandals in sports history. For years, he ran a massive underground betting ring, moving millions of dollars every single week. When the LA Dodgers' very own Shohei Ohtani's interpreter, Ippei Mizuhara, started using the Japanese superstar's own money to place staggering bets through Matt, the story exploded worldwide. But behind the headlines is a man who isn't just a bookie, he's also a gambling addict about to serve time in federal prison. Today, Matt's sitting down with me to tell the real story. He's going to talk about the chaos, the addiction, and what happens when it all comes crashing down. Matt, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the channel. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked you on the phone yesterday. Just 7 days ago, you were sentenced to 12 months and a day in federal prison. With that reality hanging over you, mate, how are you? How's your family and how are you coping with it all?
Well, first of all, Daniel, thanks for having me. I'm proud to be on your podcast and proud to help anyone who's going through a tough time, whether it's gambling addiction or alcohol or drugs, whatnot, any addiction that's out there. But to answer your question, I'm going through a tough time because the reality is coming closer. I'm 35 days away from walking into a federal prison and leaving my beautiful wife and kids behind. And that's something that is going to haunt me the rest of my life. So that's a tough moment. But what I'm trying to do is show them how to face adversity and dig deep. And you got to deal with the punches and be accountable for your actions. So that's what I'm doing.
I like it. You're taking the positives out of the situation. Take us back to the day it all started, October 2023, when the FBI showed up at your house. Talk us through that whole ordeal.
Sure. I describe it as the best and the worst day of my life. Was walking out to my car, or my wife's car, putting my 2-year-old boy at the time into a car seat, and I heard FBI freeze. And to be honest, I thought it was my friend screwing around. I look over to my left, and there was 8 AR rifles and guys in full tactical gear with a bulletproof vest, etc. And I realized it wasn't a joke. So I completely went into a fog because you just don't even comprehend what's going on. It's kind of like a state of shock. And so I grabbed my son. They allowed me to get him out of the car. They moved me and a friend of mine who was with me. They cuffed him, and they separated us on the driveway. And then they asked who was in the home. I call it the SWAT team, because they were, completely in different, I would say different attire. It was more serious. They're the ones who would go in and secure the premise. And my wife and a handyman were inside. So I explained that to him. And then I had that terror of watching my wife be handcuffed, crying, come out of the house about 2 minutes later, 3 minutes later, whatever it was, along with this poor handyman who was scared to death. And so that's, I feel like that whole process is very over the top, but I understand it because they don't know what they're getting themselves into and they got to protect themselves. So as they secure the premise, the rest of the agents now are, going throughout the house and doing the full investigation and obviously terrorizing the house, looking for money and guns or anything they could find. And then those 8 individuals left because they kind of secured the premise and they're no longer needed. And then the rest of the agents just completely ransacked the house every which way.
Like in the build up to that happening, like you say, you were in complete shock as it happened. Was there any part of you that suspected this day may come? Like, were you expecting it in any way, shape, or form, or is it caught you completely off guard? Were you aware that you were on their radar?
I was aware because in 2014, 9 years earlier, I was raided by the FBI. It was a little bit different situation then compared to here. You could feel the difference. And, when the agents came in this time, they not only were more serious, but they just had a different feel per se. I mean, not that either one was a great situation because it was very traumatic on both of them. But in 2014, when I was raided, they gave me an offer I couldn't refuse by giving me an abandonment form, which was a form that states that they'll collect the proceeds of my operation and they'll go on their merry way. I'll sign this form. I can't hire an attorney and come after the funds. It was just under $1 million. And I looked at that as an opportunity, sadly, as opposed to an opportunity to leave the business. I chose as an opportunity to grow my business. I felt like if that's kind of the worst case scenario for me, then I'll just carry on and be bigger. But that was the wrong message. That was where the greed came in, and the gambling addiction, and the lifestyle, and all the luxury and everything else superseded really the better choice, which would be go back to the regular working environment and be a regular citizen and do something legal. And I chose not to. And so this event was much more tragic.
Yeah, I read your quote on that situation, and you saw it as a get out of jail free card. You saw it as
Yeah,
there's nothing you
I
can do.
did. I mean, that's the wrong message, but that's exactly how I viewed it. But to my demise, it brought eyes to me again, and then this time they had to, teach a lesson, which was you're going to federal prison, and this is illegal. And even though I may not agree with all the laws here, and I may not agree with the fact that it's illegal in the state of California, that's I live here, and those are the choices I made. So I knew what I was doing, and I'm not a victim. And you have to be accountable for your actions. It's very important that people realize that, including myself. And that's why I'm going to do the time for my crime, and I'm going to do it with my head held high.
So Judge Holcomb cited the main reason for the time in prison as the tax fraud, despite your full cooperation with authorities. Tell me your thoughts on that, and just like talk me through that moment as the judge is reading that out. How are you feeling? What's going through your mind?
Well, it's embarrassing. You're ashamed of the fact that you're in federal court, but there's a little more behind the scenes than what you see in the headlines. My 2022 tax return I filed, and my attorney fought for the fact that I paid over $680,000 in taxes. But what they didn't show, because it's that they have me making $4.8 million, is that I lost basically just under $4 million in gambling, whether it's hedging bets through sports books or gambling in the casinos. And my CPA and I at the time, we offset the gambling losses against my gambling gains of my business, and that was obviously not legal. I want to make excuses for what I'm saying, but I just wanted some context behind it because there was more to the story than just the fact that he didn't pay federal taxes. That being said, it's easier to point fingers at yourself than it is at others, in my opinion. So I'm just owning it, and that charge and that situation's led me to a year and a day in prison, and I'll deal with the punches because I was running a legal operation, and regardless of how you break it down, I feel that the judge was very fair to me, and the prosecution as well.
This has been going on for over a year now, almost 18 months, and your wife that you spoke of there, Nicole, has been by your side throughout it all. She reminds me of my wife. She stood by my side despite the damage that I did with my gambling, and that she's been so supportive and so grounded. And I even listened to the podcast that Nicole did, and she just seems like an amazing woman. How important has it been to you to have her by your side throughout this whole ordeal?
There's no words that can describe it. My wife has been not only my rock, but just so supportive and loyal. And we've been together 10 years. We met when she was 28 and I was 40, and we were kind of living more of a wild life, so to speak. Even though my life was wild, having a son, now that he's 4, and going through the turmoil we've been through in the last 2 years, I would say our relationship right now is the strongest it's ever been. That's a testament to her and what kind of woman she is and how strong she is, and really our relationship. But I'm blessed beyond. I mean, I'm the richest man in the world, and I'm sure you feel the same way, having an amazing wife that's been loyal and by your side. And there's nothing that could really replace that. There's no amount of money I would purchase to have what we have. So I'm very blessed.
Love it. I love the challenges and the adversity, like galvanized you and made you stronger. I love it. Okay, before we talk about your personal struggle with gambling, Matt, I want to talk about your operation, the high stakes bookmaking. You were handling one of the largest illegal sports gambling operations in the US. I've read over 700 clients every week moving millions of dollars backwards and forwards. Looking back, what stands out as like the most surreal moment, the most intense moment that you were caught up in whilst you were in this enterprise, whilst you were building this enterprise? Sorry.
Well, there's several. One in particular was when I was chasing down a guy that owed me money in Fresno, California. And he came over to my home the first week he won. He was referred to me by a casino host in Las Vegas. And he won, a decent amount of capital, $88,000. And he came to my home and I paid him. And he brought a guy with him, which was strange. He was there at my house on a Monday. He seemed very eager for the money, which is always a red flag.
Was that normal that they'd come to your house to collect the winnings?
No, it's not. To be honest, my runner usually handles, seeing customers and whatnot. But given the fact that he called me on a Monday and caught me off guard, and I really wanted to meet him face to face, mind you, this is the first time I've ever met him in person. The relationship, the reason I had the relationship that we started was I was referred by a very strong casino host in Las Vegas. So I felt very comfortable, which was a poor judgment on my behalf, but I felt very comfortable that he would be a solid individual. But I was wrong. But he came to my home, and I offered that because he called me on Monday, and really I didn't have time to coordinate anything else. So I just said, "Here, come on over." And I really wasn't afraid of much. I mean, I was a guy that opened, I would say, my arms way too much to many people that I shouldn't have. I guess I felt that I was slightly invincible, especially when I was younger, because this was a younger time in my life. And he came over with the guy and said it was his brother. Clearly wasn't. And they counted all the money, which I thought was another insult, to count $88,000 in front of me, when knowing that even if he got home and there was 87.5 or whatever, I would have easily adjusted that count. But anyway, he counted the money. He drove away, and the very next week he lost $114,000. And of course, I called him on Monday multiple times, no answer. Called him on Tuesday, called him on Wednesday, and I was just getting no answer whatsoever. So I already knew that was a problem. So after another day, I decided to reach out to a friend of mine who worked at a bail bonds company, and I ran all his information, and I came up with two addresses in Fresno, California. So I hopped in a car and drove to Fresno. It's a 3-hour drive. And the first house I went to was vacant. Looks like somebody just moved out or sold it. And the second property I went to, it now was dark. The sun came down. And I knocked on the gentleman's door. And about a 15-year-old boy answered the door. I asked for his father. And he came to the door. And it was dark. So he kind of is looking out, turns on the porch light. Doesn't really recognize me. He's only met me once. And I proceeded to inform him who I was. I said, "This is Matt Bowyer, the gentleman you owe $114,000 to. You just drove 3 hours to pick up money last week." Obviously, he was startled. And he proceeded to say, hang on a minute, because he had a son right next to him. So he kind of put him away, came back, and he invited me in his house. And I said, "We're fine. We could just talk right out here." So we proceeded to walk to the driveway. But what I noticed this time, when he came back, there was a bulge in his, I'm going to say right above his groin area, in his belt buckle, so to speak. And I knew that was a weapon. So I knew that the situation was getting stickier by the minute. But I was, again, egotistical, younger, thought I was invincible. And rather than accepting fear, I just poured it right back on him and said, "Not only do you owe me the money," because he proceeded to tell me that not only does he not paying me, he doesn't pay bookmakers. And I was really startled and impressed that he was that honest. I mean, at least, I thought he was a scumbag, but most importantly, the fact that he was able to say to my face, "I'm not paying you." I always preferred that over the guy who, did what he originally did, not answering the phone and, playing a little just hiding basically. So I looked him in the eyes and I just told him, I said, there's only two ways this is going to happen. Either you're going to pay me or I'm going to leave here and somebody's going to come back here and they're not going to be so kind. And I promise you don't want that. So that was a direct message saying that, things need to be handled. And he proceeded to give me a story where, how about this? How about you give me an account with another bookie and I'll win the money from him and pay you. And I'm like, yeah, how absurd are you? The conversation was just completely a waste of time. So as it continued to go nowhere, I just told him, I said, listen, I'm leaving here now. And well, I'm sorry, I'm leaving something that's important out. When I called him out on the gun and the buckle, he grabbed it and pulled it out, and I could see he was shaky with it. And the reason he was shaky was very nervous, and of course so was I. But I really didn't show that nervousness. I just showed strength, which is really stupidity more than anything. And I just told him, if you're going to use that gun, if you're going to pull that out, you better be willing to use it. And you could see by when he was shaky, I knew that, he wasn't, I shouldn't say this. I thought that he wasn't going to use it. Clearly, he didn't, thank God. But that night when I drove away there, I realized how stupid I was. I put myself in a position for $88,000, well, 114,000, excuse me. That, I put myself in a position of life and death. Really one of the dumber decisions I've made in my life. But long story short, he called me the next day after I told him, you sit on it, but it's your choice. And he offered me $88,000. He tried again to settle the debt by giving me an account or getting an account with another bookmaker. But we settled the debt for $88,000 because I just didn't want to deal with him anymore. And I said, listen, if you pay the 88 grand, I'll let the other, 26,000 go, and we'll walk separate ways, and we'll be done, and I'll move on. But if not, we're gonna have a big problem. And I know where you live. You have obviously a 15-year-old son, and it's up to you. I mean, you know where I live, so if you want to have a war, we'll have a war. And thank God he paid it, and I moved on. But that scenario was, I wasn't married to Nicole then, didn't even know her. I was very young and very stupid and naive. But I've had many scenarios where I've been in a sticky situation, which in this case was evident because, of course, I was nervous. I had a guy with a gun pointed at me. But at the same time, I think I read the situation pretty good. And even though I was in a really bad predicament, I didn't want to fold. I mean, again, I could have got shot and killed, which would have, been the most dumb thing I've ever done, which still is. And I can't even believe I put myself in those shoes. But many times in my life, as I was younger, I made a lot of these type of poor decisions. There's no question. And even to this day, I've made poor decisions. That's why I'm having a conversation with you, facing a federal prison sentence.
Not the exact same decisions, but yeah, I've made many stupid decisions when I was younger as well. Yeah. You mentioned that there.
Yeah, well, listen, you sorry if I cut you off, but you were a gambler. And when you gamble at the level of both of us did, which is an addiction, and you're betting things you shouldn't be doing, you're putting yourself in positions where you're gambling money you shouldn't afford to lose, you do make a lot more poor decisions because you're feeding that chase, you're feeding that dopamine rush, you're constantly trying to get action, you want to continue to feed that fire, and those decisions that you make at those times are all based on that. You're not thinking clearly, you really don't care about the consequences, or at least you're not thinking about them, at least, and until afterwards. And once shit hits the fan, per se, that's when I used to deal with it. I was like, okay, I just lost $3 million and I have to go home, and my business won $1 million, meaning that the players won. I don't even have that. Now I got to go home and deal with that problem. But I wasn't thinking about that when I was betting on games and tables and whatnot. So then you get home, and then now you got to deal with that problem, which is borrowing money from friends or taking money out of your equity out of your house or whatever it may be. And that's what happens when you chase. When you're a gambler, you don't think about the actual. You think you're going to win everything, right? You always think you're going to win it back, and that's exactly where people get in trouble.
It's like being intoxicated. Once you place that first bet, it's like you're drunk. You just cannot control your decisions anymore. You use the word chase there. It's just, I'll set myself a limit. I'll set myself a target of before I go into the casino or wherever I'm going, and I win that much. But just that original thought just is gone out the window. It's like I'm intoxicated. I'm got a completely different brain on my shoulders, and I'm just going again. If I've lost money, I'll use the rest of my money to win it back. If I win this much, wow, that felt good. I now want to win this much. It just, yeah, it never ends. You said it there, it never ends. You did
It's
also
never it's
mention
never good enough.
you did also mention your book, Recalibrate. What made you want to put all of these stories and put all your basically your life down on paper and share it with the world? What was the inspiration behind Recalibrate?
You know, as I went through all these wild stories of my life, all of my friends who were there watching or being part of, they would always tell me, "You got to write a book, man. You lived a wildest, craziest life, a life of 10 rock stars in one." And to me, it wasn't that life because I lived it every day. You know, I was in private jet every 2 weeks for $2 million flying to Vegas or Monte Carlo or Bahamas or Dominican or Panama. I've been everywhere in the country, gambling at the highest levels, and then also taking bets on a daily basis of extreme volume. And when you become kind of, immersed in that life every day, it becomes like brushing your teeth. So you don't really look at yourself and feel like this is this wild life, right? But when the feds came and raided my home, and I knew I was out of the business forever, and I was definitely making a major change in my life, I decided to be therapeutic about it and write my life story, thinking possibility, the possibility of having this as a movie. The Wolf of Wall Street was what I thought about, and I wanted to put this down and show people everything that I've gone through, and that therapy of writing the book and actually, jotting down these wild stories, going down memory lane was just incredible because I didn't really realize some of the things I did. I mean, I was in a fog because it was over a 20, 30-year period of just living this every day. And then when you have to pick and choose some of the stories, because my book Recalibrate has 16 chapters in it, right? It's 85,000 words, and I could have wrote 30 chapters. I mean, there's like 14 chapters of stories that I could have put in here, but you have to limit the book. You don't want it to be a 30-day read. So I was like, I got to pick what I deem to be the most exciting parts of my life, good, bad, and indifferent. And, I left some stories out, which maybe in book two, or maybe in, who knows. But the point is, there's so much chaos that was going on in my life, which is why they're now filming a documentary on it. And I'm excited about that. But the people, who asked me to write this book, I'm so grateful because when I did write it, within 7 days, I became an Amazon bestseller. And that was exciting because you never know how people are going to read it and react. Maybe they're going to be like, oh, it's okay. It's not so bad or whatever, but it's really gained a lot of traction. And I have a lot of people that, in fact, I have every review I have on Amazon, every single one, but one is a 5-star review, which is impressive. So I'm really happy with the results. And whoever the 2-star review is, if he's watching, I'd like him to retract that. But truth be told, it's an exciting story. I love telling it. I'm happy with my life. I'm amazed at some of the things I've done. I'm embarrassed of some of the things I've done at the same time. But making poor decisions and putting myself in these peculiar positions have made me who I am today. So I don't regret it. What I like about where I stand today and the man I look in the mirror is accountability for what I've done. And I'm going to set foot in prison, and I'm going to take the time to write more. I'm going to be a stronger version of myself. I'm going to continue to grow. And in the last 2 years, I've grown more in 2 years than I have the first 48 years of my life. And that's because I've been accountable. And instead of chasing, I'm now attracting. There's a big difference. When you chase things, you're desperate. When you attract things, you're who you are, and the right people and the right things come to you. And that has everything to do with being accountable, everything about owning my shit, as I call it. And truly, I've really enjoyed the process.
Matt, I'm going to hold my hands up. I haven't finished your book yet, so the 2-star wasn't me. Based on the ice that runs through your veins, I think I'm going to put 6 stars down for it, though, just to be safe. And this is
Well,
your
thank you.
story. I'm shining the light on you today, so not to steal your spotlight, but my gambling counselor used to tell me that I should write a book as well. The stories I used to tell him. But the biggest trouble I got in with the law was riding an electric scooter at 2 a.m. on a Friday night, Saturday morning, playing Pokemon Go with 2 phones. So my stories aren't quite as wild as yours, I'm afraid.
Daniel, everyone has a story. And, what I've found is if you choose to write a book about your life, you're going to find there's more in your life than you think. And your life is more exciting than you think. And I urge anyone in the world to write a book about their own lives, because jotting it down and having a legacy for your children, for your wife to read, or a friend, is really cool, because everyone is important and everyone has something to say. And we've all been through a lot of things in our lives, some more than others, but to write it down and be therapeutic and actually have some sort of history is pretty cool.
It's awesome, man. It's a really awesome thing to say. Guys, check when we're finished up here, when we wrap up, check the description down below. There's going to be links to Matt's website and Matt's book. And if you're watching this 12 months, 18 months, 24 months later, who knows, there might be a link to the Addicted Recovery book as well. So just have a look out for that. All right, let's get back to the serious questions again. I want to talk about Shohei Ohtani. For the people watching from the UK, baseball isn't massive over there. Can you just tell us who Shohei Ohtani is, how good he is?
Yeah, he's the best athlete, my belief, that ever walked on the earth. I mean, better than Michael Jordan, better than any, Messi, better than Tiger Woods. And I say that because not only is he a global superstar, right? But the guy is a five-tool athlete in baseball. He's one of the fastest players to run in baseball. He's one of the best pitchers. He's clearly one of the best hitters. And, he has power. He has everything. He hits for average. There's nothing he can't do, really. And since Babe Ruth, you've never seen a person who could be the best pitcher and hitter at the same time. And he's a dominant pitcher and hitter, to the point where last year he won the MVP. He had over 50 home runs, 50 stolen bases, pitched amazingly, and the Dodgers won the World Series, all during this turmoil that he was dealing with this case. I mean, you have to give him credit. He's overcome adversity, and he's doing it again this year. I mean, truly, it's amazing.
How rare is it to have somebody who's so good at pitching and batting?
It's so rare. You haven't seen it since Babe Ruth, and in fact, no player does that. I've never seen it, and in 50 years of watching sports, I've never seen it, and probably never will again after Shohei.
His interpreter, I'm going to try and pronounce this right without butchering it, Ippei Mizuhara. Tell me when you first met him.
I met him in 2021 after going to a Padres Angels game. I was friendly with a bunch of Angels baseball players, and I played golf with a bunch of them, went to spring training games, hung out with them. And luckily for me, I had a good relationship, so they invited me to a poker game. And after the poker game was basically in the hotel the team was staying at. These guys would tend to, screw around and play poker after the games quite often. So when I went to the game, there was some baseball players there, some baseball coaches, some regular people, friends, and Ippei Mizuhara was there. And my good friend Mike Greenberg was sitting next to me, and he saw Ippei Mizuhara was actually placing a wager on his phone. I don't know if it was a legal or illegal book, but he was betting a game, and I believe it was a soccer game. And so Mike said, Matt does that. And then that's how it all started. So Mike built a relationship, gave him an account through my website, really small account, $1,000 a game, $8,000 credit line. And then that parlayed into, very short term later to 40,000 in credit and to 300,000, which we cut him there at 300. He paid. And the minute he paid, we opened him up to 500,000. And then he ended up losing that and paying as well. And then the third time I opened it up to 500,000, he wired it again. So he showed great honor and, obviously very, very good, credible history. And when he paid the third wire, that's when I found out the wire transfer's name was Shohei Ohtani. That was an oh shit moment. That was a holy cow. What is going on here? Who's betting? There's so many thoughts going through my head. Do I ask him? Do I not? Clearly, the account now went to $1 million credit line. And in fact, he already blew through the million and asked for more credit. So by the time I kind of saw that it was Shohei Ohtani, not only was I paid 1.3 million, but now the credit line was bigger and the balance was bigger. So I was pretty much at a point where why am I going to ask a guy who's paying on time and been very, very honorable where this money's coming from? It's really not my business. My job as a bookmaker was to provide a service, and they seemed to be very happy. He was never complaining, and nobody's happy losing. But I meant, like, he wasn't seemed to be distraught like it was his last few dollars. but we all know interpreters don't make $1.3 million. So I knew there was something going on, but I just didn't know what it was. And I thought that maybe Shohei was just betting and it was Ippei betting for him. That was my original thought pattern. But fast forward, you know, 18 months later, that's when everything, all hell broke loose. And I had no idea at that time who was betting. And you could tell by the text messaging that I made, with which the federal government displayed. I asked him, the very last text was, "It's all a cover up." And he makes a very interesting comment. His comment there says, "Technically, I screwed up." And the word technically is very interesting because that really describes a big question mark. Because what does he mean by technically? It's either I screwed up or I didn't, right? Technically, to me, is Shohei Ohtani knew about the money and assisted him. That's my honest opinion. Maybe initially or a few times or all the time, I don't know, by lending him the money. Because come to find out, there was no bets on baseball, and Ippei Mizuhara was the one gambling the entire time. But the Shohei really knew about it. That story did change a little bit, and that's the part that's still a little uncertain. But my message to Shohei Ohtani and Ippei Mizuhara would be, they're the only ones who really know the truth, right? Who know exactly what occurred and who did what. And that's the truth. I mean, they're the only two people in the world that know that.
Back to Ippei. What type of bets was he placing? Was it just sporadic gambling, or did you think he had some sort of system?
I don't believe there's any system. 80% of his bets were soccer. He was betting a ton of countries I've never heard of in my life. Obviously, I'm familiar with soccer games, you know, Messi, Argentina, Spain, the obvious games, Major League Soccer. But he was betting on, you know, countries literally I've never heard of in my life. And he was betting, you know, 26 bets a day on average. But really, because he was shut off a lot, I would say the average wagers a day were like 50, 60. And there was parlays, there was straight bets, and it was just tons of action all throughout the night. I don't think he ever slept because there was one night I went to bed and I woke up the next day, he won 4.4 million. And I was just like, oh my God, I got to watch this. This is this is a lot of action, a lot of money, a lot of exposure. Because, you know, when he won, I paid him, and I couldn't be in a position where he went on a heater and won 15, $20 million, because I had to make sure I can control it. And more importantly, I could pay it. And I wanted to keep this account for as long as possible, because you're dealing with the biggest player in the history of sports. And I didn't know who was betting. And frankly, I thought it was Shohei Ohtani, let's be real. But come to find out, it wasn't. That being said, the money was coming from there, and he paid me 16.2 million. So I wasn't too worried about it. I just provided the service and was hoping that whatever happened between the two of them, everybody was happy, because there was no sign of, distraught. In fact, Ippei would even say on text messages, "I'm really bad at this. Can you give me another bump?" Ha ha ha. Like he would laugh and kind of make a joke of himself, which, as a gambler, I'm sure you have, Daniel, too. When you just can't win, you just kind of like almost go into a hysteria about it, like it's funny, even though it's not.
I was just going to ask you a question about that. How, for the people watching who are saying you shouldn't have let him place that bet. Clearly, he had a gambling addiction. You should have cut him off. You shouldn't have let him get so deep. Because you're simultaneously struggling with gambling at this point, I know as I'm listening to this story, I've got like sympathy for him, because I've been in that situation. Do you feel that is another reason why you sort of allowed it to go, because you've been in his shoes, you were in his shoes in that moment type of thing? You were doing your own gambling on the side, and you know how bad it feels to sort of be cut off and to hit the end of the road. Whereas at least if you've still got a bit of skin in the game, you've still got a chance of getting it back. Do you feel there was a bit of sympathy there towards him, why you still let him carry on placing the bets?
Well, the first part is the sympathy, no, because I still thought it was Shohei Ohtani. Because there's no way an interpreter can afford 16.2 million. So I didn't know that it was Ippei only, and no Shohei involvement until the end. That being said, he owed me $24 million and still does to this day. I did have a final cap. I mean, if I allowed him to do what he wanted, his credit line would have been 100 million. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it probably would have been 50, because there was no stopping him. I'm the one who had to tell him no. I did have a cutting point. And I finally told him, I said, "Ippei, all due respect, you've been very honorable. You paid a lot of money. I started giving him free play instead of bumping his credit. I would literally give him free play to play just so he could get down and have action, have skin in the game. Because I do know what it feels like. Back to your comment there, I didn't want him to not have action because I know when you're a gambler and you're a degenerate, as you and I are, and Ippei is, you want action. You just want to get down. You want to feel that dopamine rush. You want it's like a drug, right? It's probably worse than any drug. I've never taken drugs, but I assume, doing heroin, I've heard is the hardest drug to kick, right? I feel like this equates to that. When you want to get in the market and bet casino games or whatever, sports, it doesn't matter what it is. You just want action. You want a chance. And when you have no chance, it's actually depressing. And Ippei was having struggles with not being able to play, so I would find ways to give him action, whether it's free play or just can you send me a wire for a smaller amount, and then he would send 500. I would open the 500 up, let him play again, but I never really knew that it was Ippei and Ippei only until the bitter end because I didn't ask. I was very greedy. I was very happy with the amount of money that was coming in, and it was also feeding my addiction. And I was flying to Las Vegas with $2 million on a plane, smiling ear to ear because I got to feed what my dopamine rush was. So I didn't want to rock that boat either. So you have one addicted person talking to another addicted person, and they're both just trying to feed each other and continue the dopamine rush. And that's really what was happening.
Set it up for a brilliant segue to talk about your gambling addiction, but I just want to ask you one more question. What does your gut tell you? Do you think it was Ippei all along, or do you think it was Otani?
Oh, I definitely, I can't say I know for a fact, but I'm almost positive it was all Ippei. I just believe that the part that's maybe not being told completely truthful is that Shohei Ohtani knew of some of the wires, whether it was 1, 2, 3, or how many wires, I don't know. But I do believe that Ippei Mizuhara had some form of permission or had Shohei send a wire or two to start. I just don't know if he got so deep and just started kind of transacting the wires himself at that point, because we all know how that feels. If you and I had access to more money, we probably, when we were in our addiction mode, we probably would have dug deep and think we're going to win it back and dug into that that little pot. And that's the problem, because most people don't have access to that kind of money. I believe any real addicted gambler would borrow the money, borrow keyword, thinking they're borrowing, which ends up being theft because they never win it back and they just keep chasing. And I believe that is partially what happened here. I just don't know what part of Shohei really knew and what he didn't know. And I don't want to accuse anybody because I have no facts. And truth be told, those are the only two people that really know the truth. And Shohei Ohtani to me is one of the best players that ever set on the face of the planet. And I feel bad that he has a little tarnish to his name because of this, especially considering he didn't actually gamble or put any bets in, because that's really the crime. If he was the one putting bets in, which to me, it shouldn't even be a crime. I mean, he didn't bet on baseball. These athletes are allowed to gamble. I mean, not through an illegal sports book, but I mean, at the end of the day, really, I mean, if he's betting on soccer and he wants to spend his money betting soccer, who cares? I mean, that's his choice.
I want to get into your personal struggle with gambling. Talk to me about your childhood, how the gambling started very early on.
My gambling started probably around 12 years old. I started going to the racetrack with, actually even before that, really, with my grandparents. But 12, 13 years old, that we would go up the racetrack and screw around and bet some ponies, and it was real close to my house. And that kind of drew me in. And then I started betting sports a little bit here and there for, $10, $5 with all the boys in the neighborhood. We bet on almost anything moving. We'd play the Nintendo and Atari back then, and we'd gamble on that. And once you're playing video games and gambling there, it led to, let's play some cards. And eventually I started running a poker ring at my house, which was great for me because I was good at poker and I was able to kind of, house this poker game because my parents, my dad was an alcoholic and, ended up having a struggle with my mom. So when he got kicked out of the house, my mom started working 3 jobs and she was never around. So now I'm 13, 14. I'm selling the Orange County Register. I'm being a paper boy. I'm hustling baseball cards. I've got a poker ring going. I was doing almost anything and everything to hustle and try to make money. And so as I developed all these, hustling habits, I started making pretty good money, taking sports bets, running a poker ring, and all while I was still, selling the Orange County Register, which led me my first taste of real success when I was the number one sales kid of the Orange County Register in all of Orange County, I won a trip from my mom to Waikiki, Hawaii. That was the most amazing feeling because I was able to allow her to, do something that, based on my efforts. So that was my first real taste of actual success, of real success. And meanwhile, I was developing a baseball card collection and hustling this poker ring. And so the gambling was instilled in me, and I felt this taste of success, and I was really loving the high life of having these kids come play poker at my house and kind of being the guy at the casino. And so it gave me this adrenaline dopamine rush that, because you've gambled, that is hard to replace. And so the truth is, from that day until October 5th of 2023, I've been gambling every day of my life, and it's never stopped.
Tell me what a typical gambling trip would look like for you over the latter few years of your gambling.
I would bring $2 million to a casino, and it would be a full war. When I walked into a casino, it was either I'm winning $2 million or higher, or they're going to get my $2 million. There's no in between. I never walked out with 300,000 left. I either walked out with 4 million or zero. And that's pretty much the war that I went through. And I don't know what it was. It was just a personal vendetta I had against casinos. Like, I felt like, here we go. And because I got my wife licensed as a casino host, that enabled me to negotiate the deal. So I had a little bit of an edge that most gamblers didn't have. Not only was my wife earning a commission on my gambling, but I negotiated the best deals, 20% discounts on my losses, promotional chips walking in. Obviously the biggest suites in the world. You have a 8,000 square foot room with a pool in it and butlers and a pool table and a movie room and, the most beautiful rooms you've ever seen. And it had full backyards, golf, putting greens. And then that was just part of it. But having a private jet with caviar waiting and bring your crew of 18 people on an entourage of a plane, there's no service like that in the world. I mean, Las Vegas is truly the best. And we would walk in there with $2 million. I would negotiate the deal and I'd go right at it. It would be a war for 3, 4, 5 days, whatever. I'd gamble sometimes 4 to 6 hours a day, but I'm betting $300,000 on a hand on baccarat. My average bet was probably 30, 35,000, but at moments I was betting $300,000 every 30 seconds of a flip of a card. And then meanwhile, I'm betting 500,000 or $1 million on a football game, maybe, or a baseball game or whatever it is, whatever sport was going on. So there was no turning it off. Unless I was sleeping, I was gambling.
Related to the first sentence you said of I was going to war. I wasn't going to leave with 15% of what I'm winning with. I was either taking all of their money or they were taking all of my money. Complete saying the thought of a gambling addict, just black or white thinking. It's everything or nothing. That's it. That's how, unfortunately, most of my times ended up nothing.
What were you gambling on? What was your advice? What part of gambling?
When I was younger, it was poker. Probably 16, 17, I was doing online poker. The second I turned 18, I was allowed to go to casinos. I'd go to in-person casinos, simultaneously doing it online. Probably about 21, 22 into horse racing and sports betting. And then for my last 3 relapses, so 2017 up to 2021, I discovered leverage trading for cryptocurrency. And yeah, it just, every time it got worse, every time the financial damage, the more I earned, the more I gambled, the more damage I did, the more trust I broke. And yeah, it was just, I've told my story on the channel. Just 2021 was the lowest of lows. I didn't want to be here anymore. And fortunately, I've been able to turn that negative into the positive, into the inspiration, into the motivation to realize I needed to change my life. Nothing changes if nothing changes. I had to start changing things. And I've been trying to do that every day since almost 4 years now. And I now say
that's amazing.
I'm the best version of myself that I've ever been. I had to go through all of that pain, all of that struggle. I had to go through that 20 years of gambling addiction in order to come out the other side and realize I needed to make those changes. So I don't regret my gambling addiction. As much damage and as much hurt as I've done, it's got me to where I am today, which is the best version of myself. I still struggle financially. My daughters, luckily only 4 and 5, so they haven't seen me behaving degenerately, but they have suffered from the finance. Like I had a full year's salary worth of debt when I finished in 2021, so they have experienced it. They have experienced the suffering, the financial suffering, but I'm just really lucky. I count myself really lucky and fortunate that they've never seen me behaving like that. And fingers crossed, touch wood, they never will. They never will see me behave like that.
That's amazing. But you have to give yourself an applause, because it's very hard to overcome that. And truth be told, you finally have surrendered. Once you surrender and you give that surrender up, I mean, you have a very good opportunity to realize that it's just not for you and you don't need it. And clearly, you doing this podcast is a way to get back to others, but it's really continue to inspire and remind you of what you shouldn't be doing. So that's all the power to you.
Oh yeah, I started this with the intent of helping others, and now 8 months, 9 months later, I realized that it's working both ways. I love getting those messages, guys. Get in the comments below. Let me know how the story's going so far. How are you guys feeling? What are you relating to? Let me know in the comments below. I love receiving the comments of just hearing people say, "I'm on day 16. You've inspired me to stop gambling. I'm on day 16 today." I love reading them, and then just hearing the struggles that people are doing reminds me of what's out there, what's waiting for me out there if I go back to gambling. So it was just to help others originally, but the amount of guidance, support, and inspiration it's also given me doing this channel is just, it's helping me on my own recovery journey as well. That's why I'm doing conversations like this. Sure. I wanna dive into a couple of painful stories. And I know this one's hard. I've read it in the book and I've heard you talking about it, mostly because of I know how protective you are of your family, and this was a particular hard moment for you and Nicole. Tell me about what happened in the Bahamas.
Yeah, that was one of the rougher moments of my life. Nicole and I went to the Bahamas because we were planning our bachelorette party, and we wanted to scout a place that we felt would be perfect for it. So we went to the Baha Mar, which was a casino that was brand new, just opened in the Bahamas. Beautiful casino. It's like the Wynn in the Bahamas. I mean, exact replica, basically. And we got there, and we had a great time. I gambled, of course, and I won $165,000. And the next morning when we were leaving, it was like 5 in the morning. We got up, went to the airport. Get to the airport, and you fill out the forms for U.S. Customs. By the way, in the Bahamas is actually located in the Bahamas because U.S. has a treaty with them or whatnot. So when I was going through the airport, there's the obvious customs forms. Do you have fruits and vegetables? Do you have any animal products? Do you have over $10,000 in U.S. currency? And I checked no to everything and then signed the form. And then you go hit the button, green, you go through, red, you don't. And of course, I got red. So the officer pulls me aside, asks these questions again. And I said, "Oh, to be honest, I do have over 10,000. And he says, "Well, you checked no here." And I said, "I'm sorry, I'm a little foggy. We had a hangover. We had a long night gambling. It's early in the morning." He said, "Well, that's unacceptable. How much cash do you have?" And I said, "Honestly, I don't know. I think it's around 140, 170. I don't even know. I won last night, cashed it out." And he says, "All right." So he pulls us aside, and basically they turned into a whole different animal. These next group of guys, they counted all the money down. It was like $166,000, and they said, "This is a felony. Actually, it's called failure to declare." And I said, "Officer, I've never heard of that before in my life. I wasn't trying to pull any fast one here," which really isn't true. I did clearly knew that I needed to declare the money, but I also knew that if I declared the money, there's a very good chance I would take it because I was flagged in the system as a legal bookmaker. So it wasn't a tax thing. It was more of a don't grab this money thing. And I said, "You can verify the funds, call the casino. Here's my host number. There's no funny business here. I'm not into drugs or anything." And they said, "Well, that's not the point. You 100% have committed a felony. We're going to turn you over to the Bohemian government." I said, "Okay." And in my mind, I've heard this happen before where they just confiscate the money. And so I was like, all right, I told my wife, well, Nicole at the time, we weren't married. I said, "We're sure they're just going to take the money." So we already missed our flight. They put us in a van, take us down to a local Bahamas jail, and they start filling out paperwork. And they hand me the phone, and they get the U.S. Embassy on the phone. And I'm like, this is interesting. So I speak to the guy at the U.S. Embassy, and I tell him the story. And he goes, "Okay, you'll be fine." Well, long story short, I hang up. And when he said "you'll be fine," I didn't know that meant we're going to go to jail. So the officer says, "Stand up." And my wife and I look at each other, and what do you mean? He's like, you're under arrest. And my wife starts hyperventilating. And I'm like, oh God, this is, I said, please, please, officer, if you want to arrest me, that's fine. My wife had nothing to do with this. I mean, and we weren't even married at the time. I said, she's literally has her own passport. She can leave, whatever. And there's no way she needed to be arrested. No, you guys are flying together. You fill out the form together. And we got cuffed and taken right to a jail cell. And the jail cell we were in, my wife was next to me, so I couldn't see her, but I hear her crying. And of course, I have that helpless guilt of like, what did I just do? And surely, the crime I committed was being a legal bookmaker. So, that's the crime I was worried about getting in trouble for, not for coming through the customs with $165,000. So I'm sitting here and I'm yelling for the guard. No one's coming. We're getting no answers. Maybe an hour or two goes by. Finally, they come and grab us. They put us in a van and drive us to an actual prison. So in that process, I'm asking a lot of questions. The actual warden was in the van. He was pretty kind. He said, listen, I have no control over this. You're going to have to wait to see the judge. I don't know how long that's going to be. So we had no idea what was going on. So we get to this prison. A couple guys come out of it. They have to open a cell a cell for a woman because they had no cells by themselves. They pull out 3 prisoners. They're shackled. My wife starts hyperventilating to the 10th degree. And then the warden says, are you going to be at harm to yourself? Because she was, literally couldn't even speak. And she says, no. And I said, no. She could harm herself. Yes. Because I knew that was going to, whatever was happening would be better than where she was going. So they ended up taking her back to the other jail, which was much more, there was actually a window and it was, it wasn't so
room with a view.
prisonage. Yeah. And it wasn't as disgusting. I can tell you that, because where I went was, once they took her, I had no idea where she was going. It was a very helpless feeling. But they put me in a prison cell there was a 2-man cell with these 2 blocks for the beds. And there was 3 guys in there. 2 guys laying down, 1 sitting in a corner. He was on crack. He was like some sort of drugs. He was shaking profusely. And they said, what's up, cracker? What you in here for? And I was like, oh, wow, here we go. I had no idea if there was going to be an altercation. It was very uncomfortable. This kid who was laying on the bed that I was sitting next to, and by the way, when I say bed, it's a block cell. There's species everywhere. It's disgusting. The toilet didn't work, and there was no water. There was no access to anything. No guards were feeding us. There's nothing. And they had these like water bottles where that's what you pee in. So they're already like 6 full of urine. It was really disgusting. So I'm sitting down in a cell. The guy's feet are right here. He just committed murder, by the way. The other guy was a drug smuggler. And like I said, the other guy was obviously on drugs. So I'm sitting there and have no idea where Nicole is, no idea what's going on. A full day goes by. About 1 o'clock the next day, the guard comes and grabs me. Thank God I'm being pulled out of there. Go to the courtroom, get in a van, drive to the courthouse. Get there, and I see my wife, who's coming in as well. We're shackled. And we get in front of the judge. She was not very kind. She said, you Americans are all the same. You guys think you can get away with tax problems and this and that. And so she scolded us. She said, the fine is $5,000, and you need to hire an attorney. And I said, well, we don't have an attorney. And I said, well, there's attorneys in the back of the courtroom. There was like a total scam. So we each hired an attorney. It's $2,500 each. So now we need 10 grand. I said, Your Honor, I don't have 10 grand. I said, we have our credit cards, American Express. You took all of our cash. And she said, well, that's unacceptable. You're going to have to go back to jail unless you get someone to wire us money. And I said, well, it's already 1 o'clock here. I could try to get a hold of somebody to send a bank wire, but you're not going to receive it. It's from a different country, probably till the next day. I said, so the attorney whispers and says, let me speak to her. He gets up to there and says, Your Honor, can you allow my client to go to Bahamas casino and withdraw funds from his marker? And she says, yes, I will allow that. So thank God they put me in a cop car and drove me to the Bahamas Atlantis, or not Atlantis, Bahamas. Atlantis is the casino next to it. Bahamas Casino. My wife, who was still sitting there, they had put her in a holding cell. So I had to go to the casino to grab $10,000 to get us out, and we'd be free. Dropped all charges, and the $165,000 is gone. we're not getting that back. So I go to the casino. I'm dirty because I was in a jail cell for a day and a half. And I walk up to the cashier, and they know me there because I was a huge gambler, one of their biggest customers. And I said, "Hi, I would like to withdraw $12,000." And I asked for $2,000 extra because I had no money, no pocket change. And she says, "Sir, Mr. Boyer, you know that you can't withdraw off a marker. You just won $165,000. The rules of the casino are you have to bring chips that you have with profit. You can't withdraw cash just off your credit line." And I know that is a rule at every casino. But I said that, clearly I have a police officer standing 10 feet behind me. I try to explain the situation. She goes, "I have no control." So she calls the manager. Nothing gets done. I said, "So you're telling me that I have to go gamble to get my wife and I out of this situation and out of jail?" And she's like, I'm so sorry. I have no control over what the rules are." So I look back at the officer and I said, "Sir, I just need to walk over to the table. I'm not going to try to explain to him what I'm about to do." So I walk over to a baccarat table, and what do you think I do? I sit down and I pull a marker for $12,000 and I bet the hand. Of course, loser. 24,000, loser. 48,000, loser. And now we're getting to the point where my limits, which were $75,000 a hand, were coming into play. And I'm panicking because I'm thinking to myself, well, I just lost, 36,000 plus 48, that's $74,000 or 84,000. My limit's 75. And if I win the next hand, I still can't even cover what I owe. And I still need the 12,000. Luckily for me, my casino host finally got a hold of the president of Bahamas, and he comes running down. He grabs me and says, "Matt, I heard what's going on. I can't believe it. Let me help you out. Let's go to the cage. I'll get you the 12,000." So I go to the cage. I get the 12,000. So now I just lost $96,000 that on top of the 165 they took, because I'm gonna have to pay this. And they cash the 12,000. I get in the car with a cop. We drive back to the courthouse, get there just in time, because basically, if we didn't get there in time to pay it, we would have to stay overnight again. We pay the fines, and they turn us over to the Bohemian immigration, and they take us to the airport. We had to make a flight right there, and we fly back to Miami, Florida, and they walk us on the plane, literally. And it was the most surreal experience, the worst experience I've ever had in my life, the scariest moment, because I had no idea, had no answers, didn't know where she was, didn't know what was going on, and all of that because I didn't declare money, which is ironic because I've done many worse things in my life, and this felony, this crime was a very simple crime, but I had no idea I was really even committing it, that big of a crime. I thought it would just take the money. That exact scenario is in one of my chapter in my book. It was a very dramatic moment for Nicole, especially because she's an innocent girl that was just there along for the ride, and next thing you know, she's whisked away into a jail cell in the Bahamas for a day and a half. Wild.
They walked you on the plane as though you were going to try and stay in the country instead. I imagine you haven't been back there since.
There was four of them in a Jeep, and they were wearing green safari outfits. This is in the Bahamas, no joke. And they had to escort us on the plane. And you're right. I told them, I said, "You guys think I want to stay here? I want to get out of here as fast as I possibly can." They're like, "Well, this is our job." I'm like, don't you worry." And what's funny is we got there because the flight time, we had a little extra time, because we obviously made it was like the next flight we could get. And so they took us right to the airport, and we had like an hour and a half window before we had to get on the plane. So we were starving. We went and got some food, and here we are. We have these four people in green, like safari suits as we're eating at the little food court. They had to walk with us everywhere we went, as if we were going to flee and go back into the Bahamas. It was very interesting.
For anybody watching who thinks I'm getting all of the stories out of Matt from the book, I'm not yet halfway through the book, and these are one or two of the hundreds of gripping stories in this book. I'm not messing. One thing I related to that I can continuously see chapter after chapter is you priding yourself on being the provider for your family and being the protector for you've got 5 children?
I do. I have
Being
5,
the
yeah.
protector of your wife and your children. Was that intentional?
My message is, my job as a father and a husband was to provide and protect. I've always tried to do that, no matter what I was doing for a living, whether it was illegal or not. And the message that I'm trying to teach people is you have to be accountable for your actions. And the hardest moment for me right now is the fact that I'm going to fail as a father and a husband by having to report to a federal prison in about 35 days. And when I walk into that prison, the guilt that I'm going to have for the rest of my life because of my actions will never leave. I mean, I don't care what happens, no matter how successful I am, no matter what I do, which I will, I'll provide all of those things I'm saying I will do. I'll come back stronger, and I'll rewrite the script. But I do have to go to my gravesite knowing that this moment is something I can't take away. I can't redo. And my 14-year-old little girl has been crying for like a week straight. My little 4-year-old boy just put on his Halloween costume last week, and had that really tough moment of realizing I'm not going to be here for Halloween. And that's a moment that I just can't get over. How about the fact when Santa Claus is going to come Christmas time and Dad's not going to be here for that? It's just hanging Christmas trees and lights and Thanksgiving and all these things that are so imperative for moments that are, for their future and for their whole life. And for us as a family, I have chosen to rip that away from them because of my poor decisions and my actions. And I got to look in the mirror and own that. And that's a very difficult conversation I'm having with myself. But I'm trying to teach my kids, when you do fall down, you got to get up, you got to dust yourself off, and you got to learn. It's what you do from the mistake that matters more than the mistake itself. And that's really my message in the book. It's my message to my kids. It's really my message to everybody, anyone listening, because everyone has a story and we all got problems. And it's how we deal with those problems, and accountability, and really running into adversity, dealing with the fire, not running away from it, that matters most.
Do you have regrets sitting here with me today?
I always answer this question awkwardly. And I say that because, of course, we all have regrets. But the reality is I don't regret anything in my life, because if I had to go back and redo anything, I may not have met my wife. I may not have my 5 kids. I mean, there's so many things that could have happened that are different. Yeah, it could be better, but it could be worse too. One step the wrong way, you could have been in a car accident. One poor choice here, or one bad choice that led to something better, you just don't know. And I don't want to look back and regret things. And of course, I would do things over again if I had the opportunity. I would avoid any negative decisions I could. But the fact is, some of those negative decisions have led me to be the human being I am today, and have given me the opportunity to be, the father and the husband I'm going to be. So at the end of the day, I don't have any real regrets. I really don't.
When I get asked that question, do I regret it? Do I regret the gambling? I have a very similar answer. I'm going to apologize for turning this into a biology lesson, but I'm a firm believer of the butterfly effect. Similar to yourself, just one little minor change and it has such a massive effect on the overall outcome. And I often refer to my last relapse in 2021. My first daughter was already born and my wife was pregnant with my second daughter. If I went back before that time and changed anything, those exact sperms would not have hit those eggs and my daughters wouldn't be who they are. Like that's the be all and end all for me. I love my 2 daughters unconditionally. All I ever wanted to be was a dad. My gambler made me believe I needed to be this big rich gambler to be able to provide for them. Getting into recovery, I realized I'd already hit the jackpot. I already had the wife and the kids. I had the family that I always wanted. But my 2 daughters wouldn't be who they are. That exact sperm wouldn't have hit that egg. My daughter Haley wouldn't look like Haley. It'd be somebody different, and that helps me just accept everything I've done. I've done it. I know I've caused harm. I know I've caused damage, but I am now the most content I've ever been with my life, and I wouldn't change a thing. I don't regret any of it.
I totally agree with you. That's amazing. First of all, my second daughter's name is Haley, so we have another thing in common. But the truth be told, these mistakes and these poor choices have led you to be who you are today, and that's exactly my point. You've made better decisions because of them, and become a better human being and person, father, husband, etc. And I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm going to rewrite my story. I'll make more money than I've ever made in my lifetime. I don't doubt that whatsoever. But I'm going to do it on a win-win. Everything I've been done in my life has been someone else has to lose for me to win. You know, I needed people to lose money gambling for me to win. I was a commodity trader, number one retail commodity trader in the world, and I needed everyone to pay commissions, and it had a negative, a moxie around it. I didn't enjoy it. But now I'm going to do something which is leading people, giving them mental mindset, working on having adversity, hopefully change their gambling addiction or porn addiction or alcohol or drugs or whatever it is, let them recover and surrender. And if I can help people, get over that hump and actually become a better human being, then I'm winning, they're winning. And most importantly, it's all in your mind. Everybody needs to understand that mindset is the biggest muscle we have is in our mind. It's the biggest key to success. And that goes to do with recovery too, because if you have it in your mindset that you're willing to surrender and become a better version of yourself and get help, you're winning and you will recover and you will beat whatever you're fighting.
I love the win-win perspective instead of needing somebody else to lose for you to win. I love that you bring them up with you. You're on the up and drag them up with you. I love it. We've spoke a lot about families. We've both got a better half. Tell me about your better half, Nicole. Where did you guys meet and how did your relationship develop?
Thank you. I met her. She was a waitress at a restaurant while she was building her amazing clothing line. It's called Coco on the Go. She developed that company actually right before I met her about 11 years ago. And she's now in I'm really proud of her. She's built herself into about 300 stores, nationwide. She's in all the Ritz-Carltons, the Montages. She's in a lot of Las Vegas casinos and the spas, yoga studios. And anyway, she's been building a brand for literally 10 years now. And what amazes me about her is just how complete and how balanced of a human being she is, not only as a mother, but as a wife and just a friend and a human being. And it just you saw her on the soft white underbelly, you got a really good perception of how grounded she is and how sweet she could be. And, I'm truly blessed beyond anything. Not only is she absolutely stunningly beautiful, but on the inside, she's just so much better of a human being than any individual I've ever been with and met. So I'm so blessed.
To use a baseball reference, you are batting way above your average with your wife.
Oh, no question. I mean, it's not even close. I've outkicked my coverage, as they say in football, times 1,000.
How involved
No question.
was Nicole with the like? Did you ever have to hide your gambling? Did she get a front row seat when you were at the casinos and see what was going on? Was she in the background? And the bookmaking as well, was she not involved, but could she see firsthand? Would you often talk to her about that side of things?
We're best friends. So yeah, I shared everything with her. One thing I have been is transparent with my entire family from day one. Everyone knew what I was doing, except for my 4-year-old boy, of course. But there wasn't anyone here that didn't know that I was gambling all the time or know that I was bookmaking or running an operation. I was really transparent, but I tried to mask a little bit of maybe the downside of it, just because I didn't want them to feel the stress and the pressures I put myself under. And I also wanted to make it seem a little bit better than it was. Other than that, Nicole was at the tables with me gambling. She actually likes to gamble, believe it or not, but not like me, not the degen side, just more for fun and entertainment, the way gambling should be for people. But it was overwhelming at the end. It was a blessing. It was starting to affect our marriage a little bit. I mean, we were strong and, nothing was happening to our marriage. But the reality is our marriage got 100 times stronger once I was raided by the FBI. And I'm so grateful for that because, I would rather be dead broke and live this amazing life with this woman than be filthy rich and live a life that's empty.
Speaking of the raid, like when it all happened in 2023, the build up to that, what do you think caused that? Was it did you make enemies along the way? Do you think somebody did you dirty, or do you think you just became too big that eventually you were going to fly above the radar and this day was going to come?
I truly didn't think they were going to come back to me. And if I did, I thought it would be maybe a similar transaction that happened in 2014. But the reason I think the reason I know they came to me was because of the Las Vegas, I'm going to call it KYC, look the other way from the KYC, I should say, turning a blind eye. And the government it wasn't happy with the fact that they weren't adhering to that know your customer rule / SARS acts and making sure that there's no money laundering going on. And clearly a lot of bookmakers and drug dealers and, people involved in things they shouldn't be are using casinos as a hub to launder money and, clean their money. So that was the problem. It started there, started with the bookmaker that led to them, that led back to me. And so I didn't know it was coming at all. I had no idea. And truth be told, I was kind of a victim of, well, I never like to say that word. I'm not a victim. I was a target because they were the target and I was part of that target. So it just led from them to me.
What came first, the raid or Ippei?
No, they had no idea. The United States government didn't even know that I was involved with Ippei or Shohei. That transpired because of the raid.
Since that day in October 2023, you've been headlines not only in USA but across the world. Like your personal life, all the mistakes you've made have been just so publicized. Your personal life since that day, I think it's been almost 18 months now, is so, I don't know how to describe it. It's just so magnified, so publified. How has that been? How's that been knowing the whole world has got eyes on you?
At first it was very difficult. I've never even had social media until actually 1 year ago today. In September is when I started my social media accounts. I got tired of being casted by the social media with the sensationalized negative drama about making a person look bad to get eyes on the story. So a year ago, big time against my lawyer's advice, I started an Instagram account. And basically, I started giving at least a little side of a narrative of what I believe to be not only the truth, but just who I am as a human being, as a person, good, bad, and ugly, just like I do in my book. I believe if you're going to tell the truth, you got to be completely transparent. You can't just tell the good stuff. You got to tell the bad, which is why my book talks about a lot of things I'm embarrassed about or ashamed of. But I own that. And I did the same thing on my social media. I wanted the public to see, that a person going through this scenario that I'm going through and still going through doesn't have to put their head in the sand, doesn't have to, play victim. Let's just own it. Let's just tell the truth and let the world see and let the chips fall where they may. And people who want to judge me, I'm okay with that. I've been judged many times. But people who want to understand that people make mistakes and being accountable and being authentic is probably the most important thing you can do at that point. That's what I'm showing the world. So my social media accounts have been growing drastically over the last year. And I've been doing a lot of media because that's my way of at least showing who I am. Good, bad, or ugly. I don't care.
I love the transparency. It's amazing to hear. I know you're a very big advocate for turning negatives into positives. So I'm not going to say the only positive, but one of the massive positives to come from that day in 2023 was the government forced you to stop gambling. You weren't allowed to gamble anymore. How did that come about? And what was it like going from taking $2 million a trip to gamble to not being able to gamble? How did you handle that?
That was a lot easier than I thought. And the reason I say that is I was forced to quit gambling. If I was gambling, I would have went to prison. They made that very clear. That was part of my plea. So, most people who gamble and quit gambling or try to, they relapse, right? As you have. And that's because you don't have the repercussions that I had, which is you're going to prison with two little girls. The last thing you want to do is go to prison. So I do believe that forced me to gamble or to not gamble, excuse me. That being said, that really isn't handling or addressing the addiction. I've been doing that by going to mental health therapy, which was required by the judge, and Gamblers Anonymous, which has helped me because I was embarrassed and ashamed to say I wasn't even going to go to that to begin with, to be honest. But I'm not anymore because I've surrendered. I realized that, gambling, there's nothing wrong with gambling. If you can use it the proper way, which is for entertainment, bringing people together, having fun, gambling is perfectly fine. Just like alcohol, even, I don't mean drugs per se, but prescription drugs. Those are all things that are handled appropriately. That's what they're there for. But for someone like myself or you, we clearly take it to a different level and we have an addiction to it and we can't do it. So I realize that. And, I tell people all the time, they ask me, are you ever going to gamble again? And I say, I can't answer that because I'm not going to lie to myself or you. I'm going to do my best I can to recover, surrender, and get through this dogfight I'm in now. And I'll deal with that when it comes. And when I'm allowed to gamble again, which will be probably 3 years from now, that'll be a tough decision I want to make, because we all know that the path of gambling is destructive when you're not doing it for fun or entertainment.
Excuse me, are you still doing the therapy sessions and the Gamblers Anonymous meetings currently?
Yeah, that's I'll do that. Well, I only have 35 days left, but yes, I will be doing that.
Do you what's your honest opinion on when the force isn't there anymore? You're not forced to go to those. Do you think you're willingly still going to be going to the therapy and still attending those Gamblers Anonymous meetings? I'll speak from my experience before you answer. I know when I used to go to those meetings, similar, not forced by the government, but doing it to tick a box, to show my wife that I'm trying to recover, to show my family that I'm trying to do something. I had to force myself to go. I was like, oh, I've got to go to a meeting. Now I log on to online Zoom Gamblers Anonymous meetings, and I have about 5 regular ones a week, and I'll normally do 1 or 2 of those 5. They're a chore. Sorry, they're not a chore. They used to be a chore. They're a pleasure now. I look forward to doing them. But I enjoy them. I look forward to going to them. I've built a recovery community. I've built friends in those meetings. It's like going to catch up with my friends. And I love it. I love going to those meetings. It's not a chore anymore. It was to begin with, but just sticking at it and getting through that initial 6 months, year, 18 months, it's now become something that I look forward to. I try and do a couple of those meetings each week, time allowing. But yeah, that's what I want to sort of point you towards, that I know you're being forced to do it now, but I'd love you to still go in with that open mind. And I don't know what the situation will be while you're in federal prison, whether there'll be meetings inside there or you're allowed to attend meetings or what. But I really do hope that you stick at them and you get through this process now of attending the meetings. And I hope it will turn out the same as me, where you start to look forward to them and they become a choice for you that you intentionally want to make. You want to go to those meetings, and that'll help you make the decision on whether you're going to go and gamble again or not.
Well, the truth is, unless you surrender, you're never ready. My dad passed away at 55 years old. He was an alcoholic. He drank 40 beers a day. My little brother just got released from prison about 6 days ago from drugs, and he's done heroin and fentanyl and everything under the sun. So it's clearly in my genes, and clearly my family struggles with addiction. So unless you surrender and you want to get help, you really aren't going to get help. And you're not going to fix your problems or address your addiction. That being said, I don't ever lie to people. I don't tell people things I'm not going to do or I'm going to do unless I will. My plan right now is 3 years from now, I'll be forced with that decision. And it'll be interesting. I don't know. I may feel like I've recovered completely on my own. Clearly, I haven't been gambling for quite some time, actually. Probably about a year ago is when I was barred from every casino in the country. I couldn't even gamble if I wanted to. That's what's funny. Right now, if I walked into any casino in the country, I am barred, banned, and not welcome. So I'm forced to not gamble, really. But as you know, a gambler could find a way to gamble through a bookmaker or,
Yep.
racetrack or whatever. So I'm not saying that's an excuse. It's going to be interesting. I've never had the decision yet where I'm allowed to gamble and then not gamble. So truth be told, I'm just going to attack one day at a time. Plan on doing, my plan is to not gamble, of course, but I need to get through what's most important right now, which is a prison term. And I'll continue to do mental health therapy, Gamblers Anonymous, and provide to myself every day, knowing that I'm working to be a better human being, father, husband. And that's my plan. 3 years from now, maybe I'll be back on this podcast and we'll be having this conversation. I hope so. That would be a really good one to have.
I'm going to hold you to that. I'm sure the viewers would love a part 2. I'm definitely going to hold you to that. Lastly, Matt, before I let you go, I know you've been open, very open with us here today, and you've been open with your social media. You've been doing other podcasts. You've written your book. What messages are you most passionate about conveying now? What are you trying to get out to the world? You're saying you're doing the win-win now, where you win and you're helping others. What's the mess? What's the main focus?
My main focus, the first thing I would say is, in life, you have to ask yourself the most important question: How do I define success? Most important question you'll ever ask yourself, because everybody has a different version of what that means. And truth be told, that's how you find true joy, not just happiness. Happiness is temporary. Joy is something that lasts. It doesn't come from something, you just go to Disneyland or you watch a movie and you experience happiness for a few hours. Joy is something you feel every day. Like when you look at your wife and you look at your children, you hug them, you see them do something, whether it's just hanging out and having family dinners. That's pure joy. The point is, you have to define what that is, and everyone has a different idea of what that is. So for me, it used to be Rolls Royces and jets and flying on planes to Monte Carlo and all that. Don't get me wrong, I love and miss all of that, and I plan on doing all of it again. But defining success for me is not that anymore. It's watching my children play volleyball, or spending quality time and going trick or treating, and Halloween, things that I'm no longer able to do, having my liberty, being healthy. Those are things that I define as success now. And of course, being in a win-win situation where I can make money and do something I love and have passion for, where somebody on the other side of the coin is actually getting, something from me, some value. That's to me how I'm defining success going forward. And clearly, staying out of trouble and doing something legal. For the first time in my life, I won't be looking over my shoulder wondering, is the door going to get kicked in? Do I have to worry about this? Am I going to get arrested? FBI coming? I mean, these are all things that you just don't want to live with every day. So when I look in the mirror, I love who I see and I love who's looking back at me. And that's how I define success.
Matt, I'll be honest with you, the build up to this interview between us, this conversation, I was incredibly nervous. You've got this media persona, you're known worldwide. Sitting here with you today, you're another human, the same as me. You're another fallible human, the same as me. And obviously, it's been portrayed in the media, illegal bookmaker. Just, I'm not good at words. What am I trying to get across? Just, you're so down to earth. I can see you're the same as me. You're a good person. You've just made bad decisions, bad choices that I did in my addiction, that you did in your addiction or your bookmaking, whatever. But I can see that you're a good human who wants to help other humans, and I've related to you so much. I'm gonna just let the viewers on a little insider. We arranged for this sit down. Matt wanted to have a phone call before this, and he stayed on the phone with me for like 25 minutes, just talking me through everything. Like he didn't even have an agenda. It was just he wanted to make me feel comfortable, and he wanted to support me and help me make this video as good as I can make it. And mate, I just want to say thank you. I just want to say you've come across amazingly today, the last couple of days that we've been chatting. And yeah, I've got so much respect for you. I hope everyone at home watching can see the person that I see here in front of me, just how down to earth and how you've got such good intentions. I wish I was better with words, but mate, from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you. Thank you for everything.
You've said amazing things already. I'm so grateful. I appreciate you sharing your journey with me as well. And I believe you can learn something from everybody in life. And I learned something from you today as well. And the fact that you've overcome this adversity and you're showing your beautiful girls when they grow up, what their dad is, beaten and overcome, including your wife, who must be overly impressed with you. And I know you said that your finances have hindered a little bit because of your poor decisions, but the reality is you'll make that money back and more. And most importantly is the money is just a key to have a better life, and the life you're living now is amazing. So the truth be, this is the most important thing in this podcast. I think people need to really take from this. The mindset is really everything. I mean, David Goggins doesn't run double marathons and do all these things because he's weak-minded. There's Navy SEALs that do things that most Americans could never even, or humans could ever even think about doing. It's all because of their mindset, right? And I haven't achieved half of the things I've achieved in my life. It's all because of my mindset. And what I'm dealing with now is harder than anything I've ever dealt with. But I'm trying to show the world that you can be positive and have a great mindset, even going through something so traumatic as we are. And my family's, dealing with a lot of adversity right now, but I want kumbaya, my whole entire family. When I walked into a courtroom, I had 250 people there and my entire family walking behind me. If you see the cameras and all the media, you'll see my wife holding my hand and all my kids walking behind me. We were a team. And that's the message I wanted the world to see, because that's who I've raised. Is we're not soldiers, but we're a family, we're a unit. And when one's down, we're all down and we build each other up. It's no different in the world. I have a social media following now that's become, like a family. And it's great to see them, support me and be, the humility I've seen in the world is truly amazing. So I'm going to continue to give that back as best I can and help people. And anyone watching this podcast, if we save somebody from their addiction or, going up the deep end and they make a great decision because I spent an hour and a half with you today, then we have won. You and I have won. And that person, they're going to thank us somehow, some way. And they don't need to thank us, but they're going to appreciate this. So that's why I have a passion for having these type of conversations. And I'm grateful that you gave me the platform to do it.
Mic drop. I just need to end it there. Amazing. Guys, everyone who's here still with us now, help me spread Matt's story a bit further. Leave a like, leave a comment below. I know Matt's going to see the comments below. Anyone who wants the full story, all the links will be in the description below for Matt's social media, where you can see the videos that he's talking about going into court with his wife. There's going to be links for his website and his book down there. Please check it out. Leave a like on the video. Matt, lastly, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. I thoroughly hope you enjoy. I really hope you thoroughly enjoy the next few weeks at home with your family.
I will, my friend. Thank you. Thanks again. I appreciate it. It's great meeting you and spending time with you.
Thanks, mate. And remember, 2026, part 2, I'm going to hold you to it.
I'm in.
Amazing. You know what? I was going to press stop record. Just let me leave it on while we have a little chat, just in case there's anything.
Yeah, of course.
Anything. I like leaving these little, just natural chats in. Sometimes you get some good stuff on it. Mate, thank you so much for giving me another hour and a half.
Of course, man. Like I said, everything I say, I mean, just like you do. So
but right back at you.
Hopefully we help somebody.
Right back at you. I just wish I could think quicker on my feet. I just couldn't find the words for it. I mean, you're such a genuine guy. It's just like...
No, you were great, man. Listen, I don't need any accolades. My accolades are like you. I give back and makes me feel good. And obviously we're helping people. And that's really what matters. Somebody out there is listening to this podcast. Eventually it's going to help them. And that's why we do it. And it also reminds us of the things we need to do better and work on ourselves.
Yeah. I love what you said. You can learn something from everyone. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. For sure.
Man, I've took enough time of your day off you today.
Hey, it's all right. It's been a pleasure meeting you, buddy. We'll talk again, obviously. Can't wait to see how this comes out. And if I can help you in any way, just let me know.
I'll be busy on this every night this week, and yeah, I'll keep you in the loop on when it's coming out. It should be next Saturday night for you. Okay,
great. I look forward to watching it, bud.
Thanks again, man.
Thank you. Have a great day with your beautiful family, all right?
Will do. Have a good night, man.
Okay, take care. Appreciate you, bud.